Check out carmarshal.com. The link is in the description. They help support us.
To see porn.
No.
Check out adult websites online. You soon may have to start paying the government.
There is a new bill being proposed in Virginia that would lock all pornographic sites from your phones and computers, and the only way to unlock them is to pay the state $20.
Robert Boyd reports lawmakers believe it will help fight human trafficking.
Porno. Some of us watch it, some of us don't. But the question is, should the government start monitoring and charging people to use adult websites? Do you think it's right that you would have to pay to see porn?
No, of course not. I think that's a freedom that we all have as Americans.
Grace Owens, like many Norfolk residents, is unaware of newly proposed Virginia House Bill 1592, also known as the Human Trafficking Prevention Act. So basically, if you buy a new phone or laptop and you go on the internet, you wouldn't get pornography websites unless you paid a $20 fee to the government.
It sounds like it's infringement on your rights or whatever.
Do you think this would help in decreasing human trafficking?
No.
Lawmakers proposing the bill say by making pornography less accessible on the internet, it will reduce the amount of human trafficking.
If people want to view pornography, that's their prerogative. But I think by having it free, it makes it too tempting on the web for other people to have access that can be influenced in a negative way.
But one man said it's like the state is punishing you for looking at something perfectly legal that some find offensive.
It's like a sin tax, like, against cigarettes or alcohol or anything else.
Others say it's not far-fetched to link human trafficking to porn, but restricting all adult sites might be going a little too far.
I feel like there's a lot of kind of side alleys that could go down where people can look at it as like, okay, maybe only types of porn versus other types.
Grace says she thinks it's a case of Big Brother. In this instance, the state of Virginia getting a little too nosy.
Very conservative place. I just don't see the relevance at all.
Now this bill is in the very early stages. No word on when or even if it will ever be voted on. In Norfolk, Robert Boyd, 13 News Now.
New bill will force people to register with the state and pay a fee to watch porn. Lawmakers are seeking to invade the privacy of citizens with a bill requiring them to pay the government for the privilege of viewing pornography online. By John Vibes, January 31, 2018. Citizens of the state of Virginia may have to start paying the government a fee in order to access adult websites. The Orwellian and unconstitutional bill is being presented under the guise of the prevention of human trafficking. Lawmakers in the state recently proposed Virginia House Bill 1592, which is also known as the Human Trafficking Prevention Act. Advocates of the bill claim that locking pornographic sites behind a $20 paywall will somehow prevent human trafficking. However, the bill has created a great deal of controversy in the state, as many people rightfully see this as an invasion of privacy and an infringement of their rights. Also, there has been no real explanation from the government as to how they determined that pornography was related to human trafficking. Many Virginia residents have said they disagree with the bill. I think that's a freedom we all have as Americans. I just don't see the relevance at all, Grace Owens told reporters. It's like a sin tax, getting cigarettes or alcohol or anything else, said Charles Plant. Sadly, however, there are some people who actually support this. Advertisement. If people want to view pornography, that's their prerogative. But by having it free, it makes it too tempting for other people on the web to have access that can be influenced in a negative way, Terry Foss said. Others who were interviewed by reporters about the proposed bill authored slightly less authoritarian solutions, such as only banning specific types of porn. I feel there are a lot of side alleys you could go down, maybe only types of porn versus other types, a woman named Carrie said during a street interview. Since this is only happening in one area, for now, if the law is passed it will still be possible for Virginia residents to use a VPN service so the internet service provider thinks that they are accessing the site from another state or country. It is estimated that 28,258 users every single second access porn on the internet. Those numbers are staggering, and allowing government access to all those identities would be a death blow to online privacy. To people who think that this move would be far-fetched, a similar law has already been passed in the UK, forcing all UK citizens who watch porn to register with the government. While there have been numerous campaigns by politicians and Puritans to link porn with human trafficking, if anyone is complicit in this barbaric practice, it is the US government along with their international allies. There are almost too many cases to list in which high-profile public figures or organizations were accused of pedophilia or human trafficking cases. However, they almost always dodge any prosecution or public scrutiny due to their control of the legal system and media. There have been many cases in recent history where establishment figures have been caught up in child prostitution rings but quickly had the story swept under the rug. One such case was on June 29, 1989, when the Washington Times' Paul M. Rodriguez and George Archibald reported on a Washington, D.C. prostitution ring that had intimate connections with the White House and President George H.W. Bush. It was suspected that this was connected with the Franklin prostitution ring that was being exposed at the same time, in a different part of the country. That story involved the manager of the Franklin Community Federal Credit Union in Nebraska. His name was Lawrence Larry King, and he was also a prominent politician. Various unconnected victims accused him of transporting them around the country to be used as sex slaves for politicians. When the accusations finally came to light, the victims were railroaded out of court and threatened into recanting their statements, thus making themselves guilty of perjury in the process. The perjury was enough to drop the case and actually send some of the victims to jail. The truth of the matter didn't come out until former Nebraska State Senator John DeCamp went back to re-examine the case and discovered that the accusations were indeed true. Human trafficking is an industry of the ruling class, it always has been. Your average blue-collar, white-collar people aren't buying and selling slaves. This is still very much a part of Western culture. Even companies with major government contracts have been accused of organizing full-scale slave rings. These companies have not only been protected by their governments, but they were also able to keep the contracts and subsidies that they had prior to the accusations. Some of the world's largest multinational corporations such as DynCorp and Halliburton were exposed as major players in the global human trafficking market. These companies did not work alone but cooperated with each other through various subsidiaries and had the luxury of government protection. When suspicion was brought upon these companies, it was swept under the rug by government officials. Even high-ranking members of the establishment such as Donald Rumsfeld were implicit in covering up this scandal. On March 11, 2005, he was questioned by Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney, and he admitted on the record that the allegations did have credibility, but he pushed the blame off onto a few rogue employees. He used the "few bad apples" line that the government always dishes out when they are caught up in a scandal. Although Rumsfeld and other high-ranking officials claimed that they would look into the situation, they actually prevented any serious investigations from taking place. This happens every day. Even organizations like the UN and NATO have come under fire for running slave rings out of third world countries when they are on peacekeeping missions.
In 2005, when Representative Cynthia McKinney grilled Donald Rumsfeld during the House hearings on the 2006 budget for the U.S. Department of Defense. Let's listen to McKinney as she questions Rumsfeld on the missing trillions and hear Rumsfeld's pathetic response.
I thank the gentleman, the gentlelady from Georgia, Ms. McKinney.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I watched President Bush deliver a moving speech at the United Nations in September 2003, in which he mentioned the crisis of the sex trade. The President called for the punishment of those involved in this horrible business. But at the very moment of that speech, DynCorp was exposed for having been involved in the buying and selling of young women and children. While all of this was going on, DynCorp kept the Pentagon contract to administer the smallpox and anthrax vaccines. and is now working on a plague vaccine through the Joint Vaccine Acquisition Program. Mr. Secretary, is it policy of the U.S. government to reward companies that traffic in women and little girls? That's my first question. My second question, Mr. Secretary, according to the Comptroller General of the United States, there are serious financial management problems at the Pentagon, to which Mr. Cooper alluded. Fiscal year 1999, $2.3 trillion missing. Fiscal year 2000, $1.1 trillion missing. And DOD is the #1 reason why the government can't balance its checkbook. The Pentagon has claimed year after year that the reason it can't account for the money is because its computers don't communicate with each other. My second question, Mr. Secretary, is who has the contracts today to make those systems communicate with each other? How long have they had those contracts? And how much have the taxpayers paid for them? Finally, Mr. Secretary, after the last hearing, I thought that my office was promised a written response to my question regarding the 4 war games on September 11th. I have not yet received that response, but would like for you to respond to the questions that I've put to you today, and then I do expect the written response to my previous question, hopefully by the end of the week.
Thank you, Representative. First, the answer to your first question is no, absolutely not. The policy of the United States government is clear, unambiguous, and opposed to the activities that you described. The second question.
Well, how do you explain the fact that DynCorp and its successor companies have received and continue to receive government contracts?
I would have to go and find the facts, but there are laws and rules and regulations with respect to government contracts, and there are times that corporations do things they should not do, in which case they tend to be suspended for some period. There are times then that under the laws and the rules and regulations passed by the Congress and implemented by the executive branch, that corporations can get off of out of the penalty box, if you will, and be permitted to engage in contracts with the government. They're not generally not barred in perpetuity.
This company was never in the penalty box. If you could proceed to my second question, please.
The second question. I've forgotten what the second question was.
I think Ms. Jonas knows it.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. McKinney. I appreciate the question. I appreciate your interest in our department's financial condition, and we are working very hard on that program. I've just come back recently.
I understand that you're working hard on it, but my question was, who has the contract? How long have they had that contract, and how much money have we spent on it?
In general, we spend about $20 billion in the Department on Information Technology Systems. The accounting systems are part of that. I can get you the exact number for the record of what we spend on our current, what we call legacy systems, and those that we're moving toward.
And who has the contracts?
That would be a multitude of individuals.
Could you name some, please?
Well, I think off the top of my head, well, I would rather not. I'd rather provide that for the record.
That's not privileged information, is it?
I'm sure it's not.
Well, please. Yeah. And we still have time, so please.
I would be glad to provide for the record. I don't want to talk from the top of my head and be incorrect.
On your first question, I'm advised by Dr. Chu that it was not the corporation that was engaged in the activities you characterized, but I'm told it was an employee of the corporation, and it was some years ago in the Balkans that took place.
It's my understanding that it continues to take place, and
is that right?
Yes.
Well, if you can give me information to that effect,
I'm sure you are interested in all of the information that I have, and I'll be more than happy to provide it to you.
Good, thank you.
But I would also like to get information from you. Okay. For example, the information that I just requested about who has those contracts.
Certainly. Let me assure the gentlelady that we'll make sure that this exchange of information takes place, and Mr. Secretary, if you can get back with us on the DynCorp story, we'll get that to the gentlelady.
We'll get
Thank you,
back,
Mr. Chairman.
We'll get back on both of the first two questions, but the Congresswoman has raised the other question twice now, and I'd like to have General Myers respond because you mentioned it in the last hearing, and I think it would be helpful to get the answer even though we're on red, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman.
General Myers, go right ahead.
But I would like to have the answer in writing as well, as I thought my office was promised.
Okay, I don't know about the promise, Congresswoman, but could you repeat the question to make sure I'm answering the right question? This is 9/11 question.
The question was, we had 4 war games going on September 11th, and the question that I tried to pose before the Secretary had to go to lunch was whether or not the activities of the 4 war games going on September 11th actually impaired our ability to respond to the attacks.
The answer to the question is no, did not impair our response. In fact, General Eberhard, who was then the commander of North American Aerospace Defense Command, as he testified in front of the 9/11 Commission, I believe he told them that it enhanced our ability to respond, given that NORAD didn't have the overall responsibility for responding to the attacks today. That was an FAA responsibility. But they were 2 CPXs. There was 1 Department of Justice exercise that didn't have anything to do with the other 3. And there was an actual operation ongoing because there was some Russian bomber activity up near Alaska. So
Let me ask you this then. Who was in charge of managing those war games?
And General, why don't you give the best answer you can here in a short period of time, and we'll. The gentlelady wants to get a written answer anyway, and then we can move on to other
The important thing
folks.
to realize is North American Aerospace Defense Command was responsible. These are command post exercises. What that means is all the battle positions that are normally not filled are indeed filled. So it was an easy transition from an exercise into a real-world situation. It actually enhanced the response. Otherwise, it would take somewhere between 30 minutes and a couple of hours to fill those positions, those battle spaces, with the right staff officers.
Mr. Chairman, begging your indulgence, was September 11th declared a National Security Special Event Day?
I'd have to look back. I do not know. You mean after the fact or before the
No, because of the activities going on that had been scheduled at the United Nations that day.
I'd have to go back and check. Don't know.
Thank you.
Okay. I thank the gentlelady. The chair would ask the gentleman from South Carolina to indulge us in that I should have called on Mr. Marshall here in the regular order and missed him, and the gentleman was here. So, if that is that okay, Mr. Wilson? We'll recognize the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate Mr. Wilson's indulgence.
Well, you're going to owe him.
Probably not very much.
County, this is Charlotte County COPWATCH, and I wanted to explain what fair use is. You can use pieces of news articles if you're doing it for news reporting, you have commentary, and you're doing it for education purposes. So that's what fair use is, as you can see right here. Another reason why I wanted to make this video is to let you know I have just joined with Patreon. A nice thing with Patreon, I make no money on YouTube. They took the money away years ago, and so this is another way to give, and it's a nice thing too because you can give monthly. You can give $1, $5, $10, whatever. I do 4 to 5 hours a day on trying to wake the sheeple up on how corrupt it is and different ways that you can fight the corruption. So Patreon is a way that you can do it, and then of course the old way is still there. Donate to Sheriff County COPWATCH with PayPal or credit card. So keep that in mind. 4 to 5 hours a day. I make no money, but the corruption happened to me and I'm sick of it, so I'm trying to wake people up. But my wife would love it if if we could get some help out there. There's 47,000 subscribers. Just think if each one of you subscribers just gave let's say actually yes, $1 a month. 47,000 subscribers gave $1 a month. That would be awesome. That's not going to happen. But anyways, that would be great if it did happen. But you know, do the math in your head. Just think about it. Like I said, 4 to 5 hours a day. I get no money from YouTube. YouTube has gone nuts. You can't do anything anymore. They're taking the money away everywhere. So these are a couple different ways that you can still help out with all this time that I put in. And as you know, I'm in a special situation where, you know, at least I can do it. You know, 4 to 5 hours a day. We have a cleaning company during the day. That's what allows me to do this, and we're debt free. So this is my hobby. I don't go fishing and all that other crap. I try to save the world. So help me out to make the wife happy, man. In fact, if you guys did give $1 a day, and there was 47,000 of you, and you did it, and each of you gave $1, and that was every month, oh my God, yes, I could quit. I could start suing them. Another idea too that we have is, you know, if I got, you know, some funds, we could actually contact everyone that has been ticketed and or arrested and put in jail and start sending them postcards to let them know we're here, and to see if everything went all right, and if it didn't, find out their story. So we could even do more investigations and more lawsuits. Lawsuits take money. So just think about that. You know, 47,000 of you so far right now. You know, $1 a day. I mean, $1 a month on Patreon, or $5 a month Patreon, 10, 20, whatever. Just do the math in your head. Help out. This is a lot of work every single day. Thanks.